All right. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to the Budhole breakdown of the 2020 NFL Draft.
This is where we break down day one of the 3 days in the NFL virtual draft. Presented by, insert sponsor here.
Possibly you. All right. Well, it's Brandon and I here from the Budhole. Star is, probably too drunk to speak, so he's out. Engages, what did he say he was between?
I don't know, sex houses or something. I don't know, something weird.
He's not going to make it. So
he's different.
We are recording this right after round one of the NFL draft just took place, and we took and recorded or jotted down a bunch of notes during the draft. Obviously, watched the whole first round. I guess we should probably start from the top, and we'll break it down kind of pick by pick, and we can kind of block off what we think should be blocked and talk about specific things too. I think that I would say for me, the first part of the draft was pretty predictable. You had Burrow going in the first pick. That was predictable. I would say the one thing that was a little surprising to me was the Lions not trading down, keeping the third spot. The player they picked was predictable in picking Okudah, but I expected them to trade down. What do you kind of think of the first, we'll say 5 picks, Brandon?
Yeah, and you could even go 6 because I think the Chargers fit right into that realm. I think the biggest shocker was the Lions. I don't think the pick was shocking, but I think the fact that they didn't try to trade down with the Dolphins so the Dolphins could surefire get Tua. Maybe they could have got another first-round pick or something in the second round or something. It just seems like there was a lot of value there that they could have maneuvered that with the Dolphins or the Chargers and still ended up with Okudah. Outside of that, I would say Andrew Thomas, just based on the recent mock drafts. We saw Wirfs going there or potentially Wills. I saw Thomas more so going about 14 to Tampa Bay. So him going up there, it was a little bit of a shocker, but he's a hell of a player. Even watching that film on him, he's a fucking stud.
Well, I think from the perspective of the Giants, they were looking for a true tackle. And in my mind, you could argue that Thomas was the best true tackle. Of the 4 big linemen, Wills, Becton, Wirfs, and Thomas, Wills and Thomas are probably the 2 most true tackles, but they're all good players. I think it'll be the easiest transition for Thomas to go from right tackle to left tackle if the Giants want to do that with him. And I think it's also something to be said that with this offseason being a weird offseason, they might have valued that higher, being able to transition easier to left tackle because they're not going to have the time to put in that they normally would.
Yeah, that's very true. A lot of the OTAs and everything are now voluntary and, doing virtual. So it's hard to get together and actually get that chemistry and hands-on training with the guys. I thought the first 6 picks were really going to set the tone for the rest of the draft. The middle of the draft actually gave me the most surprising results. But we'll just kind of go down the list real quick. I'm sure most of you already know, so we'll go fast. Bengals went with Burrow, number 1. Redskins took Chase Young. Lions took Jeff Okudah. Giants took Andrew Thomas. Dolphins then took Tua. And Chargers took Herbert. After that, the Panthers, I would say, I could have seen either way, Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons. I wasn't really surprised with the Brown pick. What about you?
I was a little surprised with Derek Brown just because I thought Simmons fits him better with Kuechly retiring. But in my mind, if you're not going to draft Simmons, Derek Brown's the pick, and he was the pick. So I'm not upset by that. I think Isaiah Simmons going to Arizona was kind of the first kind of wow moment, just because I thought Arizona was going more so all in on offense and trying to protect Kyler Murray. So for them to pass on one of the three tackles left to go with Isaiah Simmons was a little surprising to me because, Simmons is a very good player, but it's a long play to draft him. It's kind of saying, yep. I don't know. We'll see. I don't hate the pick, but I'm surprised they didn't go with a tackle. Tackle's a glaring need for them.
Yeah, I would just say the biggest thing is they're not in win now mode. They're Kyler played well last year, won Rookie of the Year. Hopefully makes another step this year. but they got a lot of younger players on that team, especially in that wide receiver core now. Fitzy is obviously older, but they got a couple of younger, well-talented guys. Who's the one that's on Gage's Madden team that he loves?
Oh,
He's a fast guy. They got Christian Kirk as one of them. Isabella.
yeah,
And
Andy Isabella.
Andy.
Yep.
Yep, Isabella. So they got a couple of younger guys on the offense. Simmons could be a force for them for years to come. So for a stud playmaker to get on your defense, just somebody to solidify that core, I think it's a good move. Tackle maybe was a little bit more of a glaring need, but I mean, Simmons is a hell of a talent, so I think it makes sense.
Yeah, the whole talk coming into the draft was kind of there's 4 defensive players that can't miss defensive players, right? There's Simmons, Brown, Okuda, and Young. And if you get one of those 4, you're getting a very, very good defensive player. And the Cardinals got one of those 4. So I can't be mad about it.
At 8 is a good spot to get him too.
The value's there. He's obviously a great player. Like he said, if you draft him, you're getting really a guy that can play. It's kind of like you're getting 3 players in one because he can play any level. He can play safety, linebacker, or D end. He's a very good player. I wouldn't say he's not, but it was a little surprising. Jacksonville then flipping the script and going with C.J. Henderson at 9 was fairly predictable in my opinion. Cleveland gets their offensive tackle in Jedrick Wills, which if you're Cleveland, you got to be ecstatic with how the draft fell out for you. You got the guy you wanted.
Wills and you have Conklin. You picked him up. The rest of your line is, fairly reasonable. I think it's a solid pickup to help protect Baker.
Yep. And for all we know, Jedrick Wills was the top-rated Cleveland Brown offensive lineman over Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, they could have got their guy,
Yep. So they got to be ecstatic. The Jets then flip back around and take Mekhi Becton with the next pick 11. Good pick for them. I kind of expected them to go wide receiver just to get Darnold the weapon, but you really can't argue going with an offensive tackle either.
I would say that's probably the biggest wrench. That was the first wrench that got thrown in the plan. The tackles getting taken by the Giants. You expected that. You expected the Browns to take a tackle. Becton going to the Jets, I truthfully thought somebody like a CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy was a better fit. I think that was a playmaker that they needed on offense. They got Bell, but who else did they got at receiver? Quincy Enunwa? Is he still around? I mean, they lost their number 1, Robbie Anderson, this year. They needed somebody to fill in that spot. It is a deep wide receiver draft, so they're probably going to get somebody else. But obviously, the lower you go, the less value that you're going to get out of your players, in a realistic world.
And really for them, I mean, one of the most interesting things to me was they kind of punted on the chance to pick the wide receiver they wanted. They could have had any wide receiver. They were all available. And then instead they ended up taking the 3rd offensive tackle. Now, maybe he was their number 1. I don't know. I'm not in the draft room. I don't see their draft board. He might have been their highest rated player out of all those. He might have been the highest guy left on their board. I don't know. It's just interesting.
For me, the thing that stands out the most about Becton, obviously he had the diluted sample. Who gives a shit? He smoked weed, whatever. That the NFL doesn't even give a shit anymore. So nobody really cares about that. It doesn't really say anything about him. The biggest thing is, I think, his weight. He's a big guy. I don't remember. Was he the one who ran a 5'1"? Did he move pretty quick?
Yeah, he was, for how big he is.
Yeah, but his size kind of concerns me a little bit. He's kind of got the guy, like the potential to be a bust is what he looks like to me. His size is intriguing, 6'7", like 364 pounds or something silly. But I heard he loves to eat. I heard he loves food and cooking more than he loves football. And his mom is a soul food caterer. I don't know. Part of me is leery about it. It feels like it's got the potential to be one of those guys that's not going to get a second contract.
Yeah, and you see there's a lot of offensive linemen that are drafted high that end up being busts. It happens in every draft. You get your Glenn Robinson or you get your Matt Khalil. It happens. You hope it doesn't happen for his sake, but it happens. And red flags aren't good. I would say of the 4, he's probably got the most red flags. The diluted sample I'm not as worried about, but you see his size. Big offensive linemen generally have injury issues, especially in the NFL. And he's not a small dude. He's almost 6'8". He's 364 pounds, like you said. He likes to eat. Of course, when you're 21 years old, it's easy not to put on extra weight, but he really can't afford to. He's a big dude.
And I mean, once he gets in the NFL, they're obviously going to have a little bit of a tougher regimen, training, eating, the whole 9 yards. So as long as he can stick to that and he's disciplined, that's great. And he can probably pull it off. But if you get into a Fat Eddie situation where you love McDonald's and Chinese food, you're going to run into some issues.
No doubt.
One funny thing I think they said while he got drafted is his mom actually had to bring his birth certificate around the youth football games and stuff to prove that he was his age because he was so much bigger than the other kids. So he's always been dominating at the level he's been playing. Let's see if he can do it in the NFL.
He's big enough to, no doubt. So then you move on to pick number 12, which is the Las Vegas Raiders. Anybody that's followed the John Gruden, Mike Mayock era knows they kind of fly by their own draft board. They go that same route this time, take a little bit of a reach, but if for them it's what they wanted. They take Henry Ruggs III, wide receiver from Alabama. He's the first wide receiver to go off the board. And in my opinion, I'm okay with it. I like Henry Ruggs a lot, but the Raiders got what they wanted. They got the guy that can really blow the top off the defense, that helps them with Josh Jacobs a lot. I like that pick for the Raiders. What do you think?
Rules, fuck them. Who gives a shit? Fuck it. Do whatever you want to. That's exactly what Gruden does. Gruden does what he wants to. He picks who he wants. He goes with what he wants to do. That Clelin Ferrell pick last year surprised a lot of people. He played pretty damn well. Ruggs was one of the top 3 wide receivers, and he wasn't that much farther down than the top 2. For him to go there is a hell of a lot less surprising than if they took, let's say, like Denzel Mims or Jalen Rager or Brandon Ayuk or whatever.
Ayuk, yep.
Ayuk. If they took one of those guys up there, that's a different story. Now we're having a different conversation. I think Judy and Lamb were a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical guys. I think they were in that, 6'1"-ish, 210 pounds, whatever.
Yep.
Where Ruggs is a little bit smaller, 5'10", 185, fast as shit. You got a burner that you can put in the slot, and I guess at this point it doesn't matter if it's Carr or Mariota. They can give him the ball. He's got the potential to break a long play touchdown. He's going to be very good for a couple of years, at least a couple of years for him, hopefully even longer than that, as long as he can keep his speed up. I was a little shocked at first, but, I mean, it really not that much different than getting like a Judy or a Lamb. You're getting a high-level player at that spot.
Yeah, he's a good pick. I like the pick a lot. So that's pick 12. Next up, you go to pick 13, which was actually a cool pick because Tampa Bay traded up with San Francisco. San Francisco dropped back one spot, and Tampa Bay decided they needed to move up one spot to guarantee themselves the last big tackle on the board, Tristan Wirfs, who they draft to protect Brady. Great pick for Tampa Bay. Makes all the sense in the world, and I think they only ended up giving up an extra 4th to move up one spot. So
yep,
makes sense for them.
So they kind of gave that 4th-round pick. I mean, they obviously traded for Gronk, which was a big move. So they traded their 4th-rounder for Gronk. And now they traded another one to move up one spot for Wirfs. However, I mean, a 4th to move up one spot, it's a no-brainer on both sides. The Niners got an extra pick to move down one spot. They didn't have to give up that much value or capital to get to where they wanted to. And they confirmed that they got their guy. Not that the Niners were really looking to take him, but it worked out.
Definitely.
And John Lynch is good at that. He schooled the Bears when they wanted Trubisky. Moved down one spot and took a lot from them. To do this, he didn't rape the Bucks like he did the Bears, but he got value for it.
And for him, you drop down one spot, you still get your guy, who they ended up drafting at spot number 14 was Javon Kinlaw. They get the guy they wanted. They pick up that extra pick. It's a no-brainer. Javon Kinlaw going to San Francisco at 14. Big fan of it. Like the pick. Good pick for them. Which brings us to the next big one, pick 15. The Denver Broncos select Jerry Jeudy, who a lot of people had between him and CeeDee Lamb 1 and 2 as the wide receivers on their big boards. So the Denver Broncos go and get their number 1, Jerry Jeudy. Love the pick. They think they might have something in Drew Lock. Let's see what he's got. He's got Jerry Jeudy now, Cortland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, Noah Fant, Philip Lindsay. Take the training wheels off this thing and let this kid run.
Absolutely. I think that was probably, in my opinion, that was arguably the first round steal of the draft. You didn't think that Jeudy was going to fall to, what was that, at 16 or 15?
15, yep.
15. You didn't think he was going to fall there. You thought he was going either to the Jets, the Raiders, or the Niners. You thought one of those three teams was going to end up taking them and Lamb. So it changed a lot. I mean, you see him fall to your spot in the draft, you kind of got to take him. He's going to be a hell of a player. And like you said, it's all on Drew Lock now. They have the skills positions on offense to be able to do something. And so let's see if he can do it. I think he can. I got a little bit of faith in him, but it'll be a test this year. He plays in a tough division too.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of it. I like Jerry Jeudy. He's my personal favorite of all the wide receivers. For him to go to 15 to Denver, I like the pick. It's a no-brainer. And then we go to pick 16 now. Atlanta decides that they're going to draft A.J. Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but if Atlanta thinks he's great, they can go ahead and make the move for him. Pick 17 is the next kind of, I guess you'd say, big pick. And Dallas decides to surpass Clavon Chase on an edge rusher, Ruiz a guard, and they draft another wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, to go along with their $100 million wide receiver, Amari Cooper, and what is Zeke, the most expensive running back contract in the league. A lot of money tied up in offense. They're on the cusp of a deal with Dak, and they go ahead and draft CeeDee Lamb to add into that offense. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. It's just a little bit of a puzzler that they would go and draft him when they have other needs.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, Frederick retiring, that hurts them. They could have used at the offensive line that Cesar Ruiz would have been a good spot, a good guard to fill in there for him. Like you said, they have Amari Cooper, just signed that 5-year, $100 million deal. Michael Gallup. I don't know who their third is, so I think he's going to fit in like really well there. But to me, it seemed like you could have taken, like you said, a Chase on. You could have gotten your safety in McKinney. You could have had a pick at one of the other top-tier corners because you lost Byron Jones this offseason. It felt like you could have used that more on the defensive side of the ball. But, I mean, again, it's hard to pass up on CeeDee Lamb, and you got to think that potentially they got a little bit of fear factor coming from losing out on Randy Moss back in the day. You know? They waited on Moss. They passed on him. We took him, and he was the best wide receiver in NFL history.
Hands down.
And CeeDee Lamb, yeah, I don't think he's necessarily that good. I don't think he's super freak or who's that other washed-up guy, that one who played for, like, the 49ers for a while?
Oh, Terrell Owens?
No, not that one. He was a little bit under Terrell Owens. Jerry Rice. So yeah. I don't think he's going to be like Randy Moss or Jerry Rice, but he could be pretty damn good. And the FOMO of missing out on a top-tier wide receiver like that, I can see why Jerry Jones didn't want to take any calls from anybody else and just decided to do it all on his own.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a Jerry Jones pick. It's splashy, and Jerry Jones is splashy. You got to remember, this is the guy whose son basically had to restrain him from drafting Johnny Manziel.
True.
And that would have been an absolute mistake. I don't think CeeDee Lamb has the potential to be that big of a mistake. I think it'll be an okay pick, but it's kind of like adding a little bit of strength to an already pretty strong group on your team when you have other needs.
Yeah, I would say a quarterback is the biggest mistake position that you could pick. You can pick a defensive tackle and it cannot go well, and you can get another defensive tackle to fill into that spot. Linebackers, receivers, that's all the same thing. Quarterback is the toughest position to play. Drafting a Johnny Manziel and him being a bust, that really screws you. But drafting a first-round wide receiver and them not panning out, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and speaking of a reach at quarterback and a potential bust, we got a big one coming up here. So everybody stay tuned for that. Pick number 18, Miami Dolphins select offensive tackle Austin Jackson. A little bit high for picking him, but he's an offensive tackle, and 4 had already gone, so I kind of get that move. And then 19, the Las Vegas Raiders once again rear their ugly heads, prove that they go by their own beat of their own drum, and they draft Damon Arnett, cornerback, Ohio State, who I like, but he's a little bit undersized. He's a little bit slow. I think he ran a mid 4.5s 40. I would have really liked him in the second round for somebody, but to take him in the middle of the first it's a little bit of a reach. We'll see how it works out for him.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give you credit. You called it. We were watching the draft, and you said that I could see Damon Arnett going here, and sure as shit, that's who they picked. So I don't know if you are on the same wavelength as John Gruden, or if you're closer to his brother Jay, smoking Jays out in the streets and whatever. But hey, you got it right, one way or another. He did run 4.56 40. So I mean, middle range, not fast, not super slow. I agree. I felt it was a little bit of a stretch. You had a couple other good guys out there. You had Jalen Johnson, who I thought was ranked higher than him. I lost my list here, but
Jeff
the Vikings
Gladney.
got Gladney. He was a solid pick. And I think there was one more.
Fulton.
I felt like Fulton. Yep, that's who it was. So, I mean, they got who they wanted. He played on the other side of Akuda, and Akuda was the top pick. I think, they probably wore off on each other a little bit, helped each other out, but he should be decent for him.
And one big thing about Damon Arnett that I like, you talk about a bulldog mentality. This dude played last season with a broken wrist the entire year, and it forced him to play on the opposite side of the field he was used to playing on. But he still played the whole year, and he was very good.
It says a lot about a player too,
especially at a cornerback spot to play with a broken wrist. He's got that bulldog mentality that I think the Raiders really like. They like those gritty players. Look at Josh Jacobs. Look at Clelin Ferrell. You look at now they draft Damon Arnett. They kind of have a profile, and they like to stick to that profile. That's part of the reason why I said watch them draft a guy like a Damon Arnett, because it's a reach. But for the Raiders, it seems like a fit.
And to have a gritty player like that, if they're maybe not the best player in the league, but they had that mentality, that underdog mentality where they're going to fight you. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be a little chippy at times, maybe draw a few penalties here and there, but they have the drive and the desire to win. He's got that, and you want to build your team around players like that. You want top-tier talent like Akuda and Chase Young that are well-defined and disciplined and everything, but you want some guys that have a little bit of an edge to them, And if you can refine that edge, even better.
Definitely. That brings us now to pick 20, which was the Jaguars' now second pick. They draft Kayvon Chason, edge rusher from LSU. I really like this pick for Jacksonville, and I think it ends up between Henderson and now Chason. They're having a really nice draft up to the 20 spot. Obviously, time will tell, right? But I like these two picks. They both make sense for them, and they're both helping to build up that defense, which needs a lot of help.
Yeah, they definitely needed help on the defense, getting an edge rusher like that, because they're going to lose Ngakoue. He's going to be gone. They have to trade him. Otherwise, he's not going to play for them one way or another. And then they also trade Calais Campbell. So to solidify their first round, they got a corner, which they really needed. And they got one of the top-end corners, the second one in the draft. And then they got Chason, who's going to be a good edge rusher for him. So I think they fared out very well in the first round.
Yep, definitely. Which brings us now to, with the Vikings being at 22, brings us to pick 21, where the Vikings fans start getting a little nervous. What's going to happen? Who's going to be left for us? Pick 21, Philadelphia drafts Jalen Reagor, wide receiver, TCU. And I think at that exact moment, Vikings faithful had a little bit of a sigh of relief, because that opened the door for, at pick 22, the Vikings to draft Justin Jefferson, wide receiver from LSU, who some people had as a top 3, if not one of the – you could say arguably the best wide receiver in the draft. I don't think many people would give you that. But at pick 22 to get Justin Jefferson is very good value, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I didn't know a whole hell of a lot about him in specific, but after watching him talk and seeing a little bit of his highlights, he runs very fluidly. He's fast. He's tall. And I saw him make some nice contested catches as well. I think he's going to be a solid player. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to have some fun throwing to him.
Yeah, he's the perfect replacement to Diggs. He was Joe Burrow's big kind of go-to guy last year. He's really good out of the slot. He's going to have to develop on the outside, but most young receivers do have to develop an outside game, especially in the NFL. He's fast. He can catch the ball. He's got good body control. He's going to be fun to watch. That brings you then into pick number 23, and the Los Angeles Chargers move up from the New England Patriots, who drop back, and they draft Kenneth Murray, linebacker out of Oklahoma, which ends the night for the Chargers, and to me really puts a stamp on a hell of a first round for them. They get a field general on offense and a field general on defense, and I think the Chargers are really headed in a good direction.
First round, I'm going to give them an A+. Herbert was considered by some the second best quarterback in the draft. They got him. They got a guy that they wanted. Time will tell if he pans out, plays well. But he's expected to be a decent pick and likely a day one starter. Maybe a quarterback battle with Tyrod, but I don't see that really being much of a competition. Kenneth Murray, he's a hell of a guy. Watching his interview afterwards and everything and seeing kind of his background story, he's got a very heartwarming story. He's got 3 siblings with disabilities. He's kind of grown up and raised them. Seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders, a good heart. He actually also helped save, I believe it was a woman who went into like cardiac arrest or something. He gave her CPR, had to do 80 compressions and helped save her life while he was playing in Oklahoma. I mean, the guy seems like a standout character, and the Chargers, they got a home run with him. I think that was an absolutely solid and a steal of a pick, and they're going to have, not to mention he's a very good player, but their defense, they got Joey Bosa, they got Melvin Ingram. Now they have Kenneth Murray in the middle. And they also have Casey Hayward, Chris Harris, Desmond King, Derwin James. Like, they have a very good defense, and if their offense can put it together, they're going to be a team to beat.
And let's remember, it's an offense that has talent. They have talent on offense. They have talent at tight end with Hunter Henry. They have talent at running back with Eckler. I'm still looking for them to add another kind of bruiser to go with Eckler, although Justin Jackson's been a running back who's been okay for them. But they have good wide receivers. They have Keenan Allen, Mike Wallace. Like, they have decent wide receivers, and there's no reason that a Herbert can't step in there day one and be successful.
What did the Chargers pick in round 2? I think they picked fairly early.
Oh, that's assuming that they didn't give up that pick with New England, which they did.
Yep, they definitely did. So the Chargers actually don't have a second-round pick, so that does kind of hurt them a little bit. That second-rounder could have been used on a Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift. I don't remember what the other top guy's name is, but they could have used it on a running back to help out Eckler.
Yep.
So that's a little bit of a bummer. Maybe one of them might be there at the top of the 3rd round if they're lucky, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Or they're a type of team that could really use they could really use some more draft capital to move up to get one of those running backs if one slides into the middle or end of the second. They don't need that much.
They gave away their 3rd as well. So they don't have a 3rd round pick. They don't have a 2nd round pick. It's going to be a tough one to move up. So I still think Kenneth Murray was a hell of a pick for them. They had to give up enough to get him, but I think he's going to be good. They could really use a running back to complement Eckler.
Definitely. Next pick is not a sexy pick, but a gritty pick. Cesar Ruiz. Interior lineman goes to New Orleans. I don't have a whole lot to say about this, except if you saw them in their last game last season and the Vikings ran that defensive end set against them and got pressure up the middle on Breeze all day, they need that guy, and they need him to be a good player. So he better be a good player. And then you go to pick 25, which the Vikings held. They ended up trading it to San Francisco, ended up getting an extra 4th and 5th out of it. San Francisco drafts Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver, Arizona State. And a lot of people had them pinged into getting a wide receiver in the middle teens, but they instead draft Kinlaw and then move up into the middle of the 20s in the first round to draft Ayuk. And San Francisco is pretty much done with the draft now, but they get Kinlaw and Ayuk, so they get a stud for each side of the football, and I think they're feeling good about where they're at.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about Ayuk. I knew he was moving up draft boards. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, runs a 4.5 40. So I mean, he's kind of middle of the road. I didn't know too much about him, but the Niners got a guy that they wanted. I think they got Kinlaw, which was a solid pick. I think they could have did better than Ayuk. But they got who they got. So I'm not in love with the pick. It's okay. I think they could have. Finagled that a little bit better, but whatever. Or I don't even think Ayuk would have went before 31, so they probably didn't even need to trade down with the Vikings.
I personally think, and it's foreshadowing a little bit into the next pick, but I think they thought Green Bay was going to go wide out, and I don't think they wanted to get pinched on Ayuk. But with that being said, they traded up, got him, and then it goes to pick 26, Green Bay. They end up drafting.
They traded up.
Sorry, yeah. So this. It's funny because it's Green Bay from Miami via Houston. So Miami got this original pick from Houston, and then Miami ended up trading it to Green Bay because Green Bay traded up. When Green Bay traded up, I thought, all right, they're going after Patrick Queen, linebacker. Turns out they traded up to 26 to get Jordan Love, quarterback, Utah State. I'm going to turn the reins over to you and let you run with this for a little while.
At first I was high on Jordan Love. I heard some good things about him. I heard he was moving up draft boards. I saw mock drafts where the Saints were trading up to get him at 10. I saw where the Saints were going to take him at 23 or 24. The Patriots were going to take him at 23, and there was a lot of heat about him. After seeing his stats after the Packers drafted him, I'm happy they took him. He took a big step back last year. From 2018 to 2019, he threw like 10 less touchdowns and 11 more interceptions. He had 20 touchdowns and 17 interceptions last year. That's not very good. I know you're going to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, but like we were talking about earlier, this is not a move that helps them win now. They are in win now mode. They're not in build for the future. They have Aaron Rodgers at the end of his career. He's on the back nine. He's already taken steps back. So he's maybe got 2 more serviceable years and a couple of below average years or average years. Drafting Love doesn't get him any talent. It just creates a guy that's going to sit on your bench, and you traded a 4th-round pick to move up to get him. However, I did see that the Packers haven't, since he was drafted, Aaron Rodgers, they've not drafted a 1st-round running back or wide receiver in his career. They have done nothing to give him any help. And to watch 2 of the greatest quarterbacks play for the team that you hate and only win 2 Super Bowls, I mean, they won 2 Super Bowls, but somewhat satisfying to know that their organization fucking botched that hard.
Yeah. And ultimately, they ended up, Favre ended up getting driven out of town because of Rodgers. And you got to picture at some point, this is what's going to happen with Rodgers too. They're going to think that Love is something, and who knows, he might be. But that they're not going to have clarification on that I think Rodgers is the starter there for at least the next 2 years.
Who's the guy they drafted a couple years ago? He kind of reminded me of Deshaun. Was it Kaiser?
Well, they drafted Deshaun. No, they didn't.
No,
draft
Kaiser
Deshaun
was on the Browns.
They drafted a guy.
He was similar to Deshaun Kaiser.
Brett Hundley.
Hundley. They kind of thought Hundley might have been their step-up guy. I kind of had that same feeling about Love, where he's going to be a guy they drafted, and they're not going to be thinking too highly of him in about 2 years. And then Rodgers said back in March, he said, it doesn't matter who you draft, they're going to be sitting behind me, which, he's not lying. It's true. Even if Rodgers has a bad training camp or whatever, they're going to sit behind him. But it doesn't help them. They needed help last year. They outplayed how good they actually were. So this is honestly, if Love works out, it's a good pick. If he works out in 5-10 years, it's a solid pick. For right now, it's not a smart pick.
I agree. I completely agree. Moving on to pick 27, Seattle decides to take Jordan Brooks, a linebacker from Texas Tech. I'm okay with the pick. I'm not super familiar with the guy, but I didn't deep dive linebackers for this year because They don't matter to me. Vikings weren't going to draft one in the first round. Um, which brings you then to pick 28. Baltimore selects Patrick Queen, linebacker, LSU. I think that was one of the most common mocked picks, with Patrick Queen or Kenneth Murray going to Baltimore. And they end up getting Patrick Queen. Pick 29, Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle to Tennessee. That was a no-brainer. And then pick 30 with Miami. A lot of people thought they were going to go running back, maybe a DeAndre Swift. They end up drafting Noah Igbinoghene, cornerback, Auburn. I'm okay with it. I don't have a strong feeling on the guy, but I was a little surprised Miami went cornerback there just because they paid to keep Howard, and they also brought in Byron Jones on a big contract. So for them to get a young cornerback, I mean, more power to them. It's the NFL. You always need corners.
I think the biggest thing with him is pedigree.
Oh, yeah.
He's got two parents that were Olympians. His mom ran track, and I don't remember what his dad did, but they were both Olympic athletes, and so he's got a well-defined background. You know, his family, they're very athletic. So he comes from a good family. He played alongside Derek Brown, and I saw a couple of his highlights, and he played fairly decent. And, I mean, you got to think at some point they're probably going to have to let Xavier Howard or Byron Jones go. I know they got the draft capital for him right now, but if they start to get decent and have to start paying their players, they're eventually going to end up losing one of those guys, and might as well kind of groom a dude to take that spot over in about 4 years when their contracts are ridiculous and you have to cut them. So it's an okay pick. I don't hate it. I don't love it.
I completely agree. Then pick 31 comes up, and I got to be honest, I'm sitting on my couch thinking at pick 31, Antoine Winfield's got to be the guy here. Like, he's got to be the pick, and I'm getting excited. And the pick comes across, and they say it's Jeff Gladney, cornerback TCU. And I got to be completely honest, I didn't lose much excitement. I like the guy. I like the guy a lot. And if you're not going to pick Antoine Winfield, Jeff Gladney is an absolute. Rick Spielman tells Mike Zimmer, "This is your pick. What do you want?" And Zimmer says, "I want Jeff Gladney because he's a Mike Zimmer guy." And that's who they got. I'm perfectly okay with this pick. And in fact, I like it a lot. What do you have to say?
I don't know a ton about Gladney. He grades out well according to his combine stats on NFL. I'm not a huge fan of his size. He's 5'10". I wish he was at least 6 foot, maybe 6'1", but he runs a 4.48, so it's not super fast, not super slow. It's kind of right in the middle. The highlights I saw of him, they were good. I'm excited. I think the biggest thing is Mike Zimmer he's very good with cornerbacks. He's a defensive-minded head coach. He trained Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes and even Mac Alexander, who they all got signed by other teams and got decent contracts. He trained all those guys. I think he can do the same thing with Gladney as long as Mike Hughes can stay healthy. I think we need to get one more guy. I don't think we can just settle on this right now, but it's solid.
And then the last pick of the night, Kansas City Chiefs are up, and it's a fairly no-brainer to me that they would have picked the running back. But the running back that they took, I was not expecting to hear. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back from LSU. And I texted in our group chat, this dude had 55 catches last year. Kansas City, I think, likes him because he's such a dual-purpose running back, the most dual-purpose. And I got to say, he's going to probably going into fantasy drafts next year be a top 5 running back in fantasy. PPR leagues, this guy's going to be a top 5 running back as far as the fantasy draft goes, I think, coming in next year. People are going to go bonkers over him because he's in that offense and because he's the type of player he is. He could not have gone to a better spot, and I really like this spot for both fits.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought that Jordan Taylor, DeAndre Swift was going to go ahead of this guy here. He does fit. He does fit the profile for the Chiefs. You know, they're kind of a fast-paced, moving team. I'm not super impressed with this guy's 40 time. He runs a 4.6, so he's not one of the fastest guys in the world. He's only 5'7". He might play a little bit quicker, but a 4.6 for a guy that small, you got to have some other intangibles that are good. So his hands must be fairly decent to take him there. But I did think a bruising running back, maybe like a Jonathan Taylor, would have been a better fit for the Chiefs. Somebody to take a little bit of pressure off Mahomes. Because when you got guys like this, you can't run up the tackles. It's a lot harder to control the clock. You have to complete passes, and to do that, you have to be very efficient. And Mahomes is, but to have a bruising running back that can take some hits up the middle and run that clock and get 3-4 yards, that's very important, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, and that rounds out the first round of the draft. We'll be back here tomorrow night after round 2 and 3 commence to bring you a little bit of the same stuff for rounds 2 and 3. We're just going to touch base, go over the big hitters, talk about it. Before we sign off, though, I want your big winner for the night and your big loser, Brandon. Who do you got for the big winner of the night? Which team won round 1?
Oh, put me on the spot here.
If you want, I can go first.
You go first, and then I will follow.
Okay. For round 1, for my winner, which is going to make me sound like an absolute idiot, and I'm going to get a lot of shit Monday night when we record, but I'm okay. I'll defend it, is the Chargers. They get their quarterback on offense. They get their linebacker on defense. And they had the exact first round that they need to get fans excited to go and watch that team in a new stadium come this fall, which ironically enough probably won't have fans in it anyways. But they get the quarterback, they get a linebacker, and I also think ironically this kind of disqualifies them from having one of the best drafts, period, because those are pretty much the only 2 players they're coming out of this draft with after giving up what they gave up to get them. But I think round 1, I'd give it to the Chargers as far as my win. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm right on pace with that. I like the Jaguars. I think getting C.J. Henderson and Clavon Chase on, I thought that was solid. They really helped their defense out there. 2 positions that they really needed a lot of help at. So I'd say they're a close second. But yeah, getting Herbert and getting Kenneth Murray, 2 solid players on both sides of the ball, helping out fill, needs that you really are looking to fill, especially after losing Phillip Rivers. You're hopefully finding your next franchise quarterback and your field general. It's kind of like a Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner type situation is your ideal situation with this pick here. So I would have to go with the Chargers for now. At the end of the year, we may be speaking a different tune about it.
And there's something to be said that a lot of teams that win the draft or win the first round of the draft, it doesn't end up meaning anything for them. So we'll see. It's all fun and speculation. It's something to talk about, but it doesn't end up being the end-all be-all. As far as a loser, I really, truly don't have a loser. No team in my mind absolutely botched their draft, which is also just speculative. But I would say some of the biggest losers would be teams that didn't have a first-round pick that ended up with not a lot to show for it, like a Houston. There was a lot of rumors of Houston potentially trying to get up into the first round to get a player, but they gutted their roster and they traded away a lot of stars and they don't have anything. So I think it's going to end up burning them to not have a player. I mean, you look at the teams that traded their first. Pittsburgh got Minka.
Which, in my opinion, that worked out well for them. That was probably better than what they would have. Where'd they draft? They traded with the Dolphins, so 18. So
Austin Jackson.
Yeah, if they would have taken a safety
or Xavier McKinney,
they would have got McKinney. I personally, what you're getting out of Fitzpatrick. I would say Fitzpatrick was a better pick there. I think it was worth trading your first round, and I think they had to give up like a 7th or something along those lines. But it was worth it.
Yep, I agree. But I think, so I wouldn't really say for me there was a big loser in this draft at all. I don't. So far, night 1 was super entertaining. The virtual layout was fun. It was a good time. And quite honestly, I was surprised at how the draft fell. I thought there was going to be a little more shuffling around. There wasn't. A lot of teams stood true to their draft board. And I'd also read a rumor that one scout said that the experts are a bunch of idiots and the draft isn't going to go how they have it going. But the drafts went pretty true to how the mocks had it. So I think it was a heck of a good first round, and it was exciting to watch. And I'm excited for rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow night.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the virtual draft actually went really well. There was a few things that were lacking because of it. I thought the player interviews afterwards, they didn't feel super exciting. You know what I mean? Everything felt super like mellow. Like normally when you're watching the draft, you see these players get drafted, you're excited, everybody's yelling and cheering and jeering, and you got people like in the actual draft facility doing this, and you have people in like a stadium together hanging out doing this. And you look at the players that weren't able to make it and they're at their home and they're all celebrating. They all have smiles on their face. I didn't notice that so much tonight. You saw the Zoom screens where you had like 12 or 15 fans or whatever on there, and they were cheering and whatever, but it didn't have the same feel to it. So I don't know how they can change that, because when they're interviewing these players afterwards, they're with their families, they're excited. It's kind of awkward.
Mm-hmm.
They have, their parents and their sister and their uncle and their friends sitting over on the couch 3 feet away from them as they're doing an interview on NFL Network. And it feels like it kind of drowns out their excitement just a little bit. They want to be with them. They want to be on here. They got them watching it. It just, that I think was a little bit of a downside in the draft. Otherwise, there was not really any big technical issues, nothing like that. A little bit of awkwardness here and there. Roger Goodell is awkward as fuck.
Oh yeah.
I would not want to be in a fucking canoe going down the river with that guy. It'd be uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, he's as stiff as a 2x4.
Other than that, I thought it was really good. One take you had earlier, and if you want to elaborate on it, was about trading down.
Yeah. I had made the point to you, because we've been hearing a lot of rumors leading up to this that there was expected to be quite a few moves. But I'd heard a couple things. One was that teams were trying to make deals, or at least get groundwork laid for deals before the draft, because they were a little worried about how the virtual draft was going to go. It ended up going pretty smooth, I think. They didn't end up pausing it because somebody glitched out or anything like that. But
only because Belichick traded out.
Well, that's a big point. I do think, though, with only being allowed 10 minutes per pick, and if you didn't have some sort of a deal in place right before you were up to make your pick, I think it was tough. It would have been tough for teams to put some sort of a deal together and get an agreement made up in those allowed 10 minutes without having all of your members of your organization in the same room talking it over. Because 10 minutes is not a lot of time to have a GM field a call, get a trade offer, go to the head coach, have the head coach say, no, I want something else and this and that. And if it takes any sort of bouncing back and forth, you're not going to be able to have a deal done in 10 minutes. So I think a lot of teams ended up saying, screw it. Let's just take the players that we have on our board and move forward that way, rather than sit and try and make a trade, because I think it's just too difficult. And I think you're going to see a lot more of, especially because once you get into rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's a little easier to make trades before the draft and kind of maneuver where you think you need to be to get a player you want. I think you're going to see more trades made in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, just because it'll be easier to kind of get the ball moving, and teams will be a little more laid back as far as willing to kind of take a gamble and shuffle players around. I think it was this was a new experience for everybody. I think it was a little nerve-wracking in general.
I agree. I think the top, even 10 picks was a hell of a lot harder to try and trade down, because they have a lot of value in those top 10 picks. You're looking at your blue chip players. And so I think what people were looking for, and to have that negotiation to figure out a fair trade for both sides, or at least what both sides are comfortable with doing, it's a lot tougher. Because think about trying to trade for 3. Well, you got to give up your first. Well, do you have 2 first? You maybe have to give up 2 first and a third this year and a 5th next year for the first and a player. There's so much more negotiating going on. Once you got to 13 and lower, like when the 49ers made their trade, it was a first and a 4th. That's a hell of a lot easier to try and make that argument, is just trading 2 picks. You're just giving up 1 more to move back. So I think that had a lot to do with it too. And not to mention, like you said, you're not together with all your guys. Your conversations are, all right, what do you think? Oh, you don't like that? Okay, I got to call this guy and see what he thinks about it, and then we'll counter offer. And then you call, and they have to do the same thing. It's a hell of a lot more back and forth.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Makes it difficult. But all in all, it was exciting. I had fun watching it. The draft is always, something that'll make your pants tight. So that's always fun.
And when you're talking about hanging out with the buds with the potential to watch a sporting event like the draft, first big sporting event since the Super Bowl, really. Because let's be honest, regular season hockey and basketball don't matter.
No.
It was a hell of a good night, good show. I'm excited for rounds 2 and 3. And we'll be right back after rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow night, bringing you another kind of breakdown of everything that's going on. But until then, as Starlamar would say, in the words of the late great Starlamar, who's no longer with us, well, for tonight anyways, he'll be back Monday. Go jerk off.
And fuck Twitter.
Oh my God, fuck Twitter. Fuck
Twitter.
God, they're assholes. That'll be for later, though. You guys have a good night.
Bye.